Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Real Estate Talk with Walter. My name is Walter. I'm a contributor to the Property Tribune, and today I'm joined by Jake, who is the newly elected president of the Real Estate Institute of Victoria. Jake, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on the program today.
No problem, no problem whatsoever. All right, well, let's go straight into it. I enjoy these interview sessions and these chats with people that just start a new role, and your role just started in October 2023. And the amount of impressions that you get is can be quite overwhelming. So when you just started in a new role, how did the industry and how did fellow professionals and clients react to your appointment?
It's a great question. So far, what I've seen has been very positive, which is great, very encouraging for me. I've had lots of messages of support and congratulations from across a variety of different areas of the property sector over here in Victoria. So that's, I mean, from a personal perspective, really buoying, and hopefully, the wider sentiment is optimistic too about what I can bring to the role over the next 12 months.
Right. So about your role, what is it that the president of the institute does? What are your responsibilities? What will you be giving your members and the public in the next 12 months?
Absolutely, yeah. In a technical sense, it's really a two-pronged role. The first prong is to chair the meetings of the board, the meetings of the institute, annual general meetings, all of those kind of big organizational meetings that determine a variety of different things for the organization, from policy, from sort of governance perspectives, etc. The second prong of the role really is to be the chief spokesperson of the organisation. It's interesting. In a lot of modern organisations, the CEO generally takes on that role, and our CEO, Quinton Killian, is very present in the media, is very present with our members in terms of communications and at events that we host, and we host hundreds of events throughout the course of the year. But I sort of share those responsibilities with Quinton, and you'll see my face on television from time to time, hear my voice on radio, and see quotes and comments from me in terms of sort of print media. I meet with journalists like yourself with varying frequency. Last week, for instance, I had 8 media calls, 3 television, 2 radio, 3 print. So it can be quite demanding at times.
Yes, yeah, no, for sure. It's a lot going on, and it's a lot of lobbying that you're required to do. So I get that. So with you now starting the new role, and you just started, and we're going towards Christmas, so probably at the moment your focus is in settling in and getting your feet warm. But what are your plans for 2024 and beyond? What are you planning to give?
Well, I divide that into 2 parts as well. So we've got a really big year for the Real Estate Institute in 2024, and a lot of those initiatives and projects are underway right now. So we're in the process, right in the middle of a sales campaign for our headquarters, which are on Camberwell Road in Camberwell, like it's an eastern suburb over here in Melbourne. We've been in these premises since the 60s, so it's huge in terms of making the move out of this traditional home of the Institute. So at the same time, we're looking to secure new premises. It's a really important move for the Institute, because whilst we're sitting on a fantastic location, incredible size and value too, what the organisation needs is some modernisation in terms of premises. You know, we need to meet the demands of modern members, of modern staff, and the public as well, all of our key stakeholders. So right now, if you'd ever visited our premises, you'd see it's almost like stepping into the past in some respects, right? And the quantum required to bring those premises up to fit the purposes and the needs of a modern organisation is probably beyond our scope right now, and it would be better in the hands of a developer. So hence the reason we're divesting ourselves of that and looking for new premises. So that in and of itself would represent a pretty big year in the Institute. But on top of that, we've also invested very heavily in a redesign of our entire tech platform. So that's a new website, new learning delivery, online learning, new membership services through a complete new platform, which the public and our members and any other stakeholders will interact with in a radically new way. So that again is massively exciting from the Institute's perspective, and we've started the process of constitutional reform too, which we've got a constitution that was, in its original form, was constructed decades ago, and doesn't serve the needs of a modern organisations. But in order to change that, we have to, per the Corporations Act, any changes to the Constitution requires a 75% majority of members voting in favour of that. So we've got to get the changes right, and then communicate them to our extensively to our large membership, so they understand and come on board with those changes, because people often get a little bit anxious when we start talking about changing, these foundational rules and regulations that govern our institute. So that's from an organizational perspective. I'm big on re-engaging with the younger members of our sector that might have in recent years started to question what the value of the institutes and the REIs generally, I think this is across Australia, are facing this kind of battle to be relevant to younger members. So re-engaging there across a variety of different avenues, whether that's, obviously technology premises, those are the big ticks in terms of, winning back those younger members, but also the content of our education, and training, the people, the speakers, the presenters that appear at our conferences, podcasts, television, etc. We need to broaden what we're doing out in that space to appeal to that younger demographic. So that's something that I'm definitely going to be pushing it as my agenda throughout the next 12 months.
All right. Well, that's very exciting. Once these things they start to fall in place, we probably should catch up and see how you're doing and how things are coming along. So
absolutely.
Keep an eye on that, and then we can catch up and see how things develop.
Definitely.
On another subject, how is the market at the moment in Victoria?
Good. It's trending in the right direction. The Institute just released its September quarterly results last week. Yeah, the beginning of last week, and it showed some really positive things that hadn't happened since June, July 2021, where we had growth across the inner, middle and outer ring of Metro Melbourne, and that was across both houses and units, which was really encouraging. If you're a property owner in Melbourne, then those signs will give you some faith that perhaps we've bottomed out in the market and that we're heading back up in the right direction. Obviously, the caveat to that kind of commentary is that the inflation figures came out yesterday, and what did they show? Above expectation. And then we start talking about rate rises again, which the rate rises have really been, the prevailing factor, I think, in uncertainty and weakness in the housing sector, certainly in Victoria. Even though we've had low supply, reasonable demand, and auction clearance rates have sat at an average of around 75% for the year. In any other year, you'd say that was a bumper year, right? Like in 2018, if we had sat at 75% for the entire year for clearance rates, we'd have gone, yeah, this is an absolute belter of a year. But this year, supply has been down so significantly, and confidence has been drained out of the market by these successive rate rises, as well as high inflation and massive, increase in cost of living. The market's been mediocre, and prices have whilst they're started to creep back up incrementally, which is great news. We haven't seen, and it's unlikely that we're going to see any radical upshift in terms of prices in the next 12 months, particularly not if we see rate rises in the cup week, as we like to call it, here in Melbourne, and the subsequent in December. So from a rental perspective, I think, like everywhere, supply is far outstripped, demand has far outstripped supply. It's been really tight in most areas. We've seen that level out in the last couple of months. So days on market for rentals are creeping back up. The rental prices have started to stabilize, if not go down in some areas, in terms of the rents achieved. And that's radically different from what it looked like March through June, where we had properties that had 75 applications coming in on them, 150 people registering for an open for inspection. So those days are behind us, thankfully from a renter perspective, but it's still pretty tight out there from a rental perspective.
All right, perfect. It's interesting to get the views of people on the ground in different states, because every state is differently. For example, you mentioned about the interest rates. The interest rates affects everybody in Australia that has a mortgage. But in WA, because the value of mortgages is lower than over east, because the home value, we were one of the most affordable states, and the most affordable state a little while ago, the effects of it is felt less because it is a percentage. The mortgage is lower, and the reaction of that is less. So it's interesting to hear that it really does have an effect over in Victoria. And hopefully, we have seen it hasn't been raised for the last couple of months. So hopefully, we'll probably look at an increase, but hopefully it won't go back into those significant amount of increases in the next couple of months, so that we can have that little bit of stability and confidence that the market is stabilizing, which is what in the end we really need.
Definitely.
All right. With that, because we still have a little bit of uncertainty, do you have a message for people out there in Victoria, or to people in Australia? Do you have a message that you would like to share with them, to let them know that we're here for them and that you're supporting them, and with your experience, what they can expect, so that they have a little bit, that they know what's going to happen in the next couple of months in the market? What's your message?
Yeah, absolutely. I was up at a conference in Sydney earlier this week, the Real Estate Innovation Festival, and one of the team members from Domain was there, and used a variation on a line that I know a lot of real estate agents like to trot out, but it was backed by data, and it essentially the message was, if you bought yesterday, you bought well, right? That's the reality of the situation, is that it's never cheaper than today, really, to buy real estate. We saw obviously a steep decline in prices over the sort of previous 18 months, but they're across Australia. They're almost back where they were, if not in some places they've exceeded where they were in terms of median prices. So the message out there is that to people that have properties is, that's great. Do what you can to keep them. There's a lot of media out there and speculation around, continued mortgage cliff issues where people are going to have to exit the market. Do what you can to keep the property, because if you can get through these stormy waters, your property will be worth what it was worth when you bought it and more, right? That's just the nature of our country, and everything is geared towards property value from a macroeconomic sense, right? We're unfortunately, we've hitched our wagon to that as one of the key drivers of economic success in the country. So if you can weather these storms and get through it and keep your property, great. Same goes for investment properties. Now, we've had a pretty unattractive environment in which to be. We call them rental providers over here now, but landlord is the common term, right? Over the past few years, things have changed from a regulatory perspective. The conditions have become more onerous for owners. Obviously, the interest rate rises have made that even tougher for people that might have borrowed up to their capacity a few years back and now are looking at rates that are essentially, 2, 3, maybe even 4 times what they were paying a couple of years ago. And then we've had some addition of some additional taxes, COVID tax, I think one of them's called, which is essentially an increase in land tax, which automatically just slapped a bigger impost on owners. So we've got a lot of landlords that are in the process of exiting the market or contemplating it over here, right? Again, the reason that's sentiment more than reality often, right? That it's sentiment that things are going badly. It's sentiment that it's not a good investment class. I'd implore all of those people to look at the trend over 5 years or 10 years if they've owned their property that long and go, it's still a great investment class, right? It's still a great asset to have. And you will, in the next year and years beyond, you'll continue to realize capital growth on most property investments, and you'll get great income producing, they're great income producing assets as well. So, and what we're doing is this sector, again, I'm big on transparency, ethics, education, and practice, right? So they're the kind of core things, the more transparent we can be with our stakeholders, which to my mind is everyone that touches property, right? Whether that's a renter, whether that's a landlord, whether that's a buyer, whether that's a seller, right? Across commercial, residential, everyone touches property, right? So we need to be thinking all the time about how we serve the community. And if we're transparent and ethical and disciplined and dedicated in delivering services and information to all of our stakeholders, then they can have faith that when they enter the market, whether that's from a renter or a purchaser, a seller, a landlord perspective, that they can do that in good faith and with a good level of trust.
All right, perfect. Well, that's awesome. It can be daunting for people because, as you said, everybody touches property, but touching property and being professional or know what's actually going on, what the trends are, what has happened in the past, it's a whole different kettle of fish. So for people to know that they can turn to an institute like the Real Estate Institute of Victoria or in any other state, it should be giving them confidence that they can base themselves on the information that is provided and then make an educated decision based on that. So thank you for doing that on behalf of the people. Thank you for doing it. And thank you for sharing your thoughts with us today. If anybody has a question for Jake about his new role or his plans or the market in general, please feel free to reach out to either myself or directly with Jake. We're happy to provide information, and the interview will be published on YouTube, and an article will be published on the Property Tribune soon. Jake, thank you for joining us.
Well, just thank you so much for having me. Thanks to everyone out there. Yeah, I echo that. If you've got any questions or queries, all of my contact details are readily available online. Just search my name. Thanks for having me, and we'll definitely catch up again later in the year and see how we're tracking with some of those projects.
Perfect. Looking forward to it. Thank you, Jake.
Thanks, mate.
Cheers.